Hi, everyone. My name is Nima Dahir. I am a Ph.D. candidate in sociology at Stanford University and a member of the Springtide Research Advisory Board. I am here today to talk about meaning making, the concept, but in particular, I wanted to have a discussion about a report that Springtide has put out called Meaning Making: 8 Values That Drive America's Newest Generations. And I'm here to have this conversation with my younger sister, Fardowsa, to understand from the perspective of a young person what really resonates and does not resonate from these values. So Fardowsa, if you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Ph.D. Dahir. I am a fourth year at Ohio State University. I'm 20 years old and I'm also Narima's younger sister.
Great. So I'm excited to have this conversation with you. And I wanted to start by just telling you, Fardowsa, what the 8 values are that Springtide has found through extensive research that emerged as all important to young people today. And what those values are accountable, inclusive, authentic, welcoming, impactful, relational, growthful, and meaningful. And so the first question I have for you is, as you hear about these values, what really sticks out to you in your life as especially important?
That's a good question. I would say the one that stuck out to me the most when you first read those was authenticity. As I'm growing into myself as a young woman, I've sort of come to realize that, when people tell you to be yourself, it's not some kind of like empty thing that they just say. It is actually like really important. And especially with the pandemic, I've sort of had to shake off any part of myself that felt like me trying to be somebody for other people or me trying to perform some idea of myself, and really sort of come to understand who I am, what I like, and take it from there. So.
That's beautiful. What is it specifically about the pandemic that you think has renewed the importance of authenticity for you?
I would say one major thing is that obviously you and my other older sister Ilhan both moved back into the house, and it sort of felt like as adults, being around each other as adults for the first time, we were sort of getting to know each other.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was trying to show who I was to you guys, I had to come to a better understanding of who I was for myself. So that would be the biggest factor that pushed me towards that sort of realization.
Yeah, I love that. I think that there's such a freedom in the confinement of the pandemic that we've really had the opportunity to get to know one another as sisters and as adult sisters. So that's been a great joy of this past year for me too. So for the next thing I wanted to ask you about is just the concept of meaning more generally. And if you could just let me know, how is it that you make or find meaning in your life?
I like that question a lot. So I think that we're so used to just like trying to like get through things like the hows of life and like trying to figure out what we're going to be doing on a day-to-day basis, that a lot of times we get kind of we can sort of forget, or we lose track of the whys in our lives. So why we want to do things, why we want to be certain places. And so I think for me, the biggest why, the major factor in my life that sort of pushes me to find meaning is my relationships. My relationships with my family, with my friends, and with my general community, and the work that I do in my community. I don't think that there's any, actually, now that I'm thinking more about it, meaning to me outside of these relationships. I don't think that any of us are islands. All of us are interconnected, and a better understanding of the people around us will help us understand, meaning in our own lives. So that would be the biggest thing for me.
Yeah, that's a really wonderful way to think about it, is that like meaning, I think sometimes too, there's this concept of meaning being this individually driven thing that we're searching for. Is what is our purpose? What is it that is going to make our lives feel meaningful? But I think you've really very eloquently there described something very relational about meaning making as well. And that's one of the values that emerged from this report as well, is like the interconnect, that relationships are a source of meaning. And so I think there's a lot of people that would resonate with that as well. And I do very much. I wanted to ask you as well, like, as you reflect on your life thus far, and hopefully at the end of a long life that awaits you, how will you know that it's been meaningful?
It's definitely extremely cliche at this point to say this, but I would say, the people around me at that point in my life, and the things that they would have to say about me, and not necessarily about like any accomplishments, any worldly accomplishments that I might have at that point, but more so like what they could say about, um, the type of person that I was.
Mhm.
And that's not to say like there's good people or there's bad people. What I mean is like the type of person that I was in my relationships with everybody around me. So how I treated people, how I helped people in any way that I could. So that would be like the biggest thing for me is at the end of my life, I would like to know that I've helped people as much as I could and treated people as well as I could.
Yeah, and I think that similar to that, I also was curious to hear about, not just reflecting on at the end of your life what is meaningful, but in your experiences now, if you can describe any experiences that you find to be very meaningful, whether that's, a ritual that you do every day, or a single moment in your memory.
I tried to find, meaning in my life every day. I think most people do try to find meaning in their lives every day. So for this, I mean, this means that a lot of the times for me, meaning is like in the moments of stillness and mundane ritual, just things like brushing my teeth, eating breakfast, like stepping out, trying to be really present in those moments and understand that all the mundane and the boring parts of my life are still my life. And so for that reason, they're meaningful. But, especially post COVID, in the time that I get to spend with my family, just being around them, being able to do things for them on a day-to-day basis. Like I've come to realize that, your life is every moment. And so you have to find meaning in every moment. Um, yeah, that would be the biggest thing for me.
That's beautiful. I want to ask you, shifting gears just a little bit away from meaning, I wanted to ask a bit about spirituality and your inner life. So if you could tell us what role does spirituality play in your life?
To me, I would say, spirituality doesn't really play a role in my life so much as it is like a big umbrella under which I try to live my life. So um, I heard a really good quote once actually about prayer and how it keeps you, on track, so to speak. So being reminded to slow down and, just talk to God, be really present 5 times a day is one of the most important things that prayer does for me. Because, I know that it's really easy to get caught up in like exams, work, future plans, and all these sort of things like coalesce into this massive anxiety and fear. And so for me, the primary purpose of spirituality is to it's the reminder that there's more than that and that we're more than that. And so that's kind of like what I try to live by on a daily basis.
Yeah, thank you. I also wanted to speak a bit with you about, I know this is probably such a question that you get a lot as a young person, but if you could speak a bit about on behalf of your generation. And I know that in this meaning making report, impact is one of the values that they defined. And it's defined as actively engaging key social issues and thoughtfully minimizing harm. And so I want to hear from you a little bit about the value of the value of impact in your own life, but then also how you view that as a generational shift in young people today too, and how is it that they think about impact in all of the decisions and actions that they do.
Could you define impact again?
Yeah, it's actively engaging key social issues and thoughtfully minimizing harm. So you can start with just describing some of the work you do in your own community on engaging social issues and minimizing harm.
As far as like some of the things that I do concerning impact, when I started my time at Ohio State, I began a program called Encore, where we teach literacy and, music education to incarcerated youth. I also work in a program called Sister Sister with Columbus City Schools. It's a mentorship program for young women in Columbus City Schools. And I also, and distracted me. I'm sorry. My other sister just walked in, so I've lost my train of thought. But I've done a couple different things at Ohio State in my time at Ohio State. And the biggest thing for me about impact is like being able to think outside of yourself. I've never been incarcerated and all these different things that I work in, but it's an understanding of like every single person is a person that's going through something else. And I think like as a human being, it's part of my responsibility to try to, make a positive impact on as many people as I can. So that's the biggest thing for myself. And I would say that's a big thing for a lot of the people in my age group. Almost everyone I work with is between the ages of 18 and 23, and they're all really dedicated to making change happen. And it's really inspiring to see that. So
yeah, I'm curious, why do you think that, colloquially we hear a lot about, the youth are going to save us, the young people are on the precipice of really changing the world. And so I'm curious, in your experience as a young person, there's no right answer to this, of course, but why is it that it feels so urgent for young people to be at the forefront of so many social issues, as we saw with all of the protests with racial justice in this country, and as we continue to see with climate inequality and climate justice in this world too, that so many of our movements are led by young people. So I'm curious about why you might think that young people feel such an urgency to change the world in many ways.
I think it has like less to do with my specific generation and like the group of young people that, I'm a part of, and more to do with just the general condition of like youth.
Mm-hmm.
I think young people are always going to be the major drivers of change because they're probably the most invested in the future and vested in like an idea of what they want the future to look like, because they're going to have to be a part of that. So that would be the major thing for me.
Yeah, thank you. I think that that's very true and resonates. I'm not too much older than you, so I think
I don't know.
It resonates with me too, of like this desire to build a future in which we see as many people actively engaged, and a world that is as just and equal as possible for us and for our offspring, especially when it feels like the world is so constantly under different duress and different problems. So it's really amazing for me as your older sister, but also as someone who is slightly older than you, to see you specifically, and also so many of your generation really actively working to make this world a lighter place for different people. So I want to conclude with just one last question, which is, how do you find that the work that you do outside of yourself, how do you find that impacts your own sense of well-being and your own confidence or pride in yourself as well?
I mean, I would say like most of my life to me is about my relationship. So I try to be, the best person that I can be for other people. And in turn, that's kind of what makes me feel good about myself. I think that it's our biggest responsibility, as human beings, to try to take care of other people and be kind to other people. So when when I'm with my family, like actually just like in my relationship with my family, and also in like the work that I do in my community, all of these things, like trying to be the best version of myself in these relational senses, is what makes me feel, good about myself internally. So
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Fardowsa. It's been wonderful to talk about youth and meaning making and all of these different values and how they are in practice and resonate with you in your own life. So thank you all to everyone listening. And thank you again, Fardowsa, for taking the time.
Thank you, Nima. Bye.